So you just picked up a Protectli Vault to use as your router and firewall. Good choice. Now you might be wondering, what do I do for Wi-Fi connectivity? If you're using OPNsense or PFSense, don't toss your old wireless router just yet. Rather than purchasing a dedicated wireless access point, you can repurpose your old router to function as an access point or AP, while the Vault acts as your firewall and router, handling network management while your old router provides wireless connectivity. Why use a dedicated access point? Because it gives you the flexibility to place it wherever you get the best wireless coverage, like the center of your home, rather than where your modem or firewall lives, increasing your Wi-Fi signal strength and reliability. Why not just install a Wi-Fi card directly in the Vault? Well, routing and firewall operating systems like OPNsense and PFSense are built on FreeBSD, which currently lacks driver support for modern Wi-Fi standards like 802.11ac and newer. FreeBSD, in case you're curious, is a Unix-like open-source operating system known for its stability, security, and performance. It's derived from BSD, or the Berkeley software distribution, which itself is a version of the Unix operating system. FreeBSD is widely used for building other operating systems, since some of its key strengths are its robust networking stack, security features, and extensive documentation. If you'd like to learn more about FreeBSD or need help installing OPNsense or PFSense, we'll include links in the video description below. Before configuring your old router, it's a good idea to reset it to factory settings to remove any previous configurations. This is optional but recommended. Keep in mind that these instructions will vary depending on the particular model of router you're using. That being said, most of them are relatively similar to one another. With the device plugged into your electricity and powered on, first locate the reset button. It's usually a small hole in the back of the router. If it's not clearly labeled, refer to the documentation that came with your router, or try to look it up online if you no longer have it. You can usually do this by going to a search engine and typing in the full model name of your router, usually found underneath or on the back of the device. Though if you're using this method to locate your router's documentation, make sure you're on the manufacturer's official website. Look for signs like a proper company domain and no strange pop-ups or download prompts. Typically, you have to press and hold the button using a paperclip until the router reboots. Step 2 is connecting to the router. Plug your computer into the network port on your old router using an Ethernet cable. The router we're using for this example uses the LAN or local area network port rather than the WAN or wide area network port, but check your documentation as your mileage may vary. Power on your old router if it's not turned on already. Open a web browser on the same computer that's plugged into your old router and enter the router's IP or Internet Protocol address. This is usually found on the back of the device or in the device's documentation, though it's usually 192.168.1.1 or 192.168.0.1, and it can sometimes also be a regular URL instead, like the address for a website. You may need to enter the default login name and password in order to access your old router's settings, which are also typically found on the back of the device or in the device's documentation. Once you've reached your old router's homepage, you'll likely be asked to perform a one-time setup that involves setting up a network name, a login name, and accompanying passwords. The credentials that you enter for the network name or SSID and password will be used to access the Wi-Fi broadcast from your router, while the login name and password will be used to access and modify your router's settings. Again, keep in mind that this will look different depending on what model of router you're using. Set the SSID, also known as the Service Set Identifier or Wi-Fi name, to your desired name. This can be almost anything you want, though using a unique non-descriptive name that avoids personal information, like your name, address, or other identifiable details, is recommended. Also, for your SSID, choose an appropriately complex Wi-Fi password and save it in a secure place for later, keeping in mind that you may want to share this with others later, depending on your particular home or office Wi-Fi setup. It's also recommended that you choose WPA2 or WPA3 security, if given the option, as these are the current standard for Wi-Fi security. WPA is short for Wi-Fi Protected Access, and ideally it's recommended that you choose WPA3 if it's an option, as it's a newer protocol with stronger encryption. Your login name can be almost anything as well, though again it's recommended that you avoid personal information. And it's also recommended that you use a password manager such as Bitwarden for your login password, both for generating a secure password and for storing the password itself. This will change the default password from the back of your old router or the device's documentation. So keep in mind this is what you'll be using to access your old router's settings going forward. If you're not automatically prompted to set up a network name, login name, and passwords after connecting to your old router for the first time, look for an option labeled Wireless Settings, Advanced Settings, or something similar in order to set up the network information. You may also be asked to update your firmware. It's recommended that you proceed with any updates, as using the latest firmware is generally best for security purposes. Be sure not to power down or unplug your router while the firmware update is in progress. This may take a few minutes, but once it's done, if the page does not refresh automatically, go ahead and refresh the page by clicking the refresh button at the top of your browser, and you should be good to continue. Next, we're going to enable access point mode. This isn't always an option on every device, but try looking for an option labeled access point mode, bridge mode, or AP mode. If it's there, go ahead and enable it. This will disable the router's DHCP server, NAT functionality, and routing features, while allowing it to function only as a wireless access point. DHCP, in case you're curious and didn't know, is short for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, and it's basically just the network protocol that automatically assigns IP addresses to the devices on a network. NAT, or Network Address Translation, is a technique used in networking to modify the IP address information in IP packet headers while they're in transit across a router or firewall. Basically a fancy way of saying the thing that allows different devices on a network to share a single public IP address when accessing the internet. After enabling AP mode or bridge mode, the router should automatically adjust its settings to work as an access point, including assigning a static IP address. In this setup, where we're using the Vault as a firewall and router, it's best that the Vault handles DHCP instead of your new access point to ensure that the Vault has full control over network traffic, security, and routing. If your router does not have an option labeled access point mode, bridge mode, or something similar, you may need to disable the DHCP server manually. Once logged into your new access point's dashboard, navigate to LAN settings, network settings, or something similar in the router's admin panel. Then look for something similar to DHCP server and disable it. Be sure to apply or save the changes when you're done. Another thing you'll want to do if your old router does not have an access point mode is assign it a static IP address within your Protectli Vault subnet, but outside its DHCP range. Most consumer routers will use their default IP address like 192.168.1.1 or 192.168.0.1 like I mentioned earlier, unless manually configured. If you didn't explicitly assign a static IP during the setup process, your new access point is probably using its default IP, which could potentially cause an IP conflict with the Vault's DHCP server if the Vault assigns an IP in the same range, meaning you won't be able to connect to the network. To circumvent this, first find the LAN IP address settings, then change the IP to an unused address in your network. For example, if your Vault is 192.168.1.1, try setting the router to 192.168.1.2. Be sure to apply and save the changes when you're done. Keep in mind that after changing your new access point's IP address, depending on how you get to your new access point's settings, you may have to enter the new address rather than the old one going forward. Lastly, we'll go ahead and connect your new access point to the Protectli Vault. Use an Ethernet cable to connect a network port on your new access point to the configured LAN port on your Vault. As mentioned earlier, we're using the LAN port of the new access point for this example, but it could potentially be the WAN port depending on what model of router you're using. If you've plugged the Ethernet cable into a port on your Vault that's been configured correctly, it will connect automatically. This allows the Vault to manage all network traffic, while your old router acts only as a wireless access point. To test the connection, you're going to want to connect a device to the Wi-Fi network. To do this on Windows, for example, you can click the network icon on the taskbar, look for the SSID or network name set earlier in the video, and then enter the password that you created and saved earlier. And then you can attempt to access the internet. This is assuming that your Vault is connected to the internet and that you already have an internet connection through your internet service provider. Keep in mind that this will not work if you didn't already have working internet access beforehand. If you need help connecting your Protectli Vault to your home network modem, we have a video on the channel that explains how to do this, which we'll leave a link to in the video description. Congratulations! Your Protectli Vault should now be managing your network securely, while your old router provides Wi-Fi connectivity. And if you need multiple access points, you can always set up additional routers in the same way for better coverage. If you run into any issues during this process, we recommend first looking up documentation for your router, but if you can't find what you need there, feel free to leave a comment below and we'll help out where we can. Make sure you're on our email list so you don't miss out on core boot updates, product releases, and everything happening at Protectli, linked in the video description below. Also, consider subscribing to the channel for future videos on the Protectli Vault, network security, and more. Thanks for watching!